What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. On today's random video, I decided to make a PC out of parts that I had available to me. The parts are going to be right in front of us, and we'll go through those parts here in just a moment. I did want to explain the thought process behind this PC. It's a very, very simple PC designed for web browsing, designed for YouTube streaming, not much else. My wife and I work for a billing company, medical billing company. And from time to time, we're told that we have to work from home, which is not uncommon nowadays. But we figured we have a spare computer now, since I have my work computer and my gaming computer available to me. It'd always be nice to have a spare computer in case she also needs to work from home. Now, we're going to go through the parts from right to left. We have the power supply over here. It's a 610 watt power supply. It's an EVGA 610 BP. For the case, we're going to be using a Cooler Master Q300L. I know that the airflow in this is not the best, but again, it's not a super powerful computer. We're going to be running integrated graphics, so we don't need to have too much going on with it. The cool thing about this case is that I can actually move this to either section of this case in order to get it to where we want. And for right now, the power supply and everything else works better in this orientation that we have it now. It does come with an acrylic side panel that I have removed, so that is out of the way and we don't have to deal with removing that at the moment. For the CPU, we're going to be using a Ryzen 3 3200G. Now this is a 4-core, 4-thread processor with a clock of 3.6 and a boost of 4.0 gigahertz. It's got integrated graphics, Vega 8, and they're clocked at 1250 megahertz. For their cooler, we're going to be using the stock cooler that came with the 3200. It's not super powerful, but it's what we have on hand. Like I said, it's everything that we have on hand is what I'm going to be using. So this cooler should do just fine. It was used before, so it doesn't have the pre-applied thermal paste. Oh my gosh, I can't even speak. But I will be applying some thermal paste to that. For the RAM, we're going to be running Corsair Vengeance LPX, clocked at 3000. It's 2 8 gig sticks, totaling 16 gigabytes. For the storage, we're going to go with a Inland SSD. And this is not an M.2, so I will have to use a SATA cable, which is fine. I'm going to try to throw these 140 millimeter fans in the front and see how that goes. Hopefully they'll fit the case just fine. For the motherboard, we're going to be using something that's as basic as it gets. And this is the ASRock B450M HDV, and honestly, I couldn't find a cheaper motherboard if I tried. This thing has no frills, simple as can be, no heatsink on the VRMs, nothing. It's just as basic as it can get. But again, it's all I had on hand, so that's what I'm going to be using. I'm also going to be using a fan splitter to get the two fans out front to work, and the case does come with an exhaust 120 mil fan. So those are the parts. In order to build this entire PC, I'm just going to need this. It's a Phillips screwdriver and some zip ties, which I'll use for cable management. This case is not the best for cable management, but I will do what I can and show you the results. Now let's start building this thing. All right, guys, so as you can see, this is the back of the case with the cables. And as far as cable management goes, this case is pretty good for it because it has a pretty big gap in order for you to hide any cables and route cables throughout. I have another cable, SATA data cable, that needs to go through, and I'll discuss that when I flip the case over. But that's the only thing that's kind of visible. It's kind of bugging me as well. It's this SATA data cable. I wish it was just hidden a little better. Unfortunately, I can't figure out the best routing option that I have is this. So there it is. But a couple of zip ties to hold everything in place. The audio is running this way and here, and then the fans are running from this side down and onto the splitter, which is over here. Let's go over to the front of the case and show you exactly what that looks like now. As far as the front of the case, you see that I have the two 140 mil fans up front. Again, with this case being the way that it is, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of airflow going through this, but it is what it is. As far as the front of the case, up top here, I ended up using an extra 320 gig hard drive that I had in stock. Again, it's not much. It's not intended to be used very much. All it is just another form of storage so that I can take files and put them in there and then delete before the day is done. The SSD is going to have Windows 10 Pro, and that's what we're going to be using to run our programs. Everything will be saved. Small files will be saved in the hard drive. As far as cable management up front, it looks relatively clean in my opinion. There's not much going on with it. Down here, because this power supply is not a modular power supply, I have all the cables still in the front. And I'm going to show you in better detail exactly what I did to keep that out of the way and looking fairly neat. Yeah, so as far as the graphics card, we'll discuss that again shortly after this. But let's go ahead and discuss these cables here in just a second. So here's a better look at the power supply. Again, this is not a modular power supply, so all the cables are attached to it. But what I did was the extra cables that I wasn't using at this particular time, I bundled them up with a Velcro tie. And then I removed the mesh panel or the mesh filter underneath this case, and I fed a wire through and tightened that up. So now all these are bundled up and wired to the case, so they're not moving anywhere. That's going to prevent the case from looking sloppy and looking messy. Now, as far as the graphics card goes, we are running on integrated graphics for the time being. Whenever I find a decent deal on a graphics card, I will go ahead and purchase that, and that'll fit right here. Graphics cards that will pair well with the 3200D are the RX 580, the 570, 5500 XT, a GTX 1650 would be nice, 1660 Super, something like that is kind of at the top of the range for this CPU. But all in all, I think this build came out nice and clean. Now, to conclude this video, I just wanted to mention again that this is going to be used for a secondary computer or an extra computer should my wife get told that she has to work from home. We're not looking for crazy power here, so this should be more than enough for now. I know that this power supply is 610 watts. It's kind of overkill, but it gives us the option for that graphics card addition should we ever get one. You can technically play games with the 3200G, 720p probably. I'm not exactly sure how many of you out there want to play at 720p. I've done it, I've enjoyed it, but that was more for a niche project that I was doing. But this will work just fine for our needs, for our medical billing issues and uses. So yeah, thank you guys for watching the video. On the next one, let's see, what should I discuss? I don't know. It's gonna have to be random. Later, guys.